TikTok is set to be shut down in the United States on January 19th. At the heart of this is the fight between free speech and national security, because
Correct.
TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company, and ultimately the argument is that the Chinese Communist Party owns ByteDance.
Yes.
And is this a national security threat because it is so invasive as far as getting biometric data and facial recognition and all of the things of how much data we give TikTok, just like we give every other social media app, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat or Twitter. Like, data privacy is a red herring to me as far as this being a thing, because we give our information out freely.
But those are American companies. It makes sense, the argument between, the two sides. The national security thing doesn't hold quite as much water as you said, because we do give our information to everybody. If somebody's going to get your information, they're going to get your information, and we give it away all the time without knowing it, because it's the old saying, if you're not paying for a product, you're the product.
Exactly.
So everything that we use for free on the internet that you think, oh, isn't this great? Somebody's giving me this. Well, sure, they're giving it to you, but what are you giving back to them? That's the thing. I don't know if China is being, duplicitous in this and there's all sorts of national security implications. Depends on who you listen to on Capitol Hill. I know, for people like you who use it for good rather than evil, it's a bad move.
I owe my career in Wisconsin to TikTok.
Okay.
Kind of sad that it could be going away. But I just am dealing with the fact, because I started downloading all these other apps that people are saying are potential replacements, and they're all just garbage. They're all not the same. Instagram is not the same. YouTube Shorts is not the same. Other smaller things that could maybe have potential, but it needs an influx of people who are creating things there. And it's just, I don't know if there's a Hail Mary. I know Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts yesterday announced via press release that he is going to be proposing a bill, I think today, that would extend the TikTok ban deadline for 270 days. There was Bloomberg reported randomly yesterday that maybe Elon Musk would buy it, which at that point I would rather them just ban it entirely. But it's a big deal. Even if for you personally don't think it's a big deal, to a lot of people it is. And I am starting to come to the terms with, it's a bigger deal to me than I thought it was. Do you feel like this is actually a threat between national security and freedom of expression, or is there something else going on?
Everybody frames this as a TikTok ban, but what Congress said was actually this is a divestment. So the Chinese Communist Party, through ByteDance, needs to divest from U.S. TikTok, and they obviously have no First Amendment rights, and that's certainly what the Supreme Court was focused on. So it's not as much of a free expression issue. I think what we will be facing will be sort of a user revolution. We haven't done a particularly good job of letting users know why this is a problem, why this app may actually be causing them harm.
And why is that?
Because it's incredibly addictive. We have a former Wisconsin Congressman, Mike Gallagher, referred to it as digital fentanyl. And that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but I think it's a good way of thinking about this app. When you have so many users who say, I can't live without something, we are thinking about addictive behaviors here. And the reason that ByteDance would not want to spin off U.S. TikTok is because they refuse to give up the algorithm. And that, to me, makes me skeptical about what's in the algorithm that is particularly addictive. So when you hear creators say something like, well, I can't possibly leave TikTok and go over to Instagram because I can't capture the audience and attention and minutes on Instagram that I do on TikTok, that's because TikTok's algorithm is delivering audience quite possibly through addiction.
Do we have, because as someone who spends a lot of time on both apps, I feel like Meta is just as guilty of this. And if they could figure out TikTok's algorithm, there's no way that they wouldn't capitalize on it. And I feel like that also is some of the conversation behind the scenes as far as how much lobbying money Meta put into trying to get this done. And that there is a bigger conversation that does not have anything to do with national security or the well-being of us as citizens but it's actually about money.
Well, in the end, it all is about capitalism, isn't it? But
Yeah.
I would say most of Meta's lobbying money was actually trying to shut down KOSA, the Kids Online Safety Act, which they did successfully, in my mind, unfortunately. But yes, there is tremendous competition in this space. But I think one of the things that gets lost on TikTok users is how vulnerable they are when their data can be swept up so broadly, and how vulnerable other people can be. So, for instance, during the Supreme Court oral arguments, the government raised the issue that by default, when people go on TikTok, they allow access to their contacts. And it made me pause and ask my 3 kids, hey, do you have this setting on TikTok? And they all said, uh-huh. And so my data is swept up. Yeah, I'm in their contacts list with my name, my profession, my birth date. And not that I'm doing anything that would make me open to being a national security vulnerability, but I'm not at all comfortable with that data being out there. And we do have evidence. The Chinese Communist Party demanded data from U.S. TikTok related to journalists and their data, their contacts, their movement, because they were trying to suss out leaks in the government. And so we have evidence that this national security concern does exist. It is real.
How do we get Americans who are on TikTok to say, wow, this really is dangerous, we have to make a change? Or are we too far gone on that where people just don't care?
I don't know. It sounded from your conversation like you guys were very comfortable giving away your data, saying, I get this app, I get a benefit from this app, and so I'm surrendering my data as the cost.
Well, no,
and I think
it's
people
just part of it's just part of the way every app is. I mean, our data is taken even in things that a grocery store app suddenly has my data because they know what I eat every week. And is it either we don't use anything, or we resign ourselves to the fact that our data is out there. And if that's the case, what's going to make Twitter worse, other than what they've proven? And do people really care?
I honestly don't know the answer to that last question. Do people really care? I've actually been quite surprised over the last 20 years about how sort of casually people give up their data and information. We now have situations where we're recorded going into the grocery store. There are screens that have our video, and that video is saved. And they could take biometric data from that video. And when it went up in one of my grocery stores, I stopped going to that grocery store. My husband was like, I don't care. I have nothing to hide. So I think we're fairly casual about how much we give away that data. But I will say, to the other apps that you mentioned, whether it's X or Meta with Instagram and Facebook, those are U.S. companies. And
yes.
we have civil liberties protections in the United States that if the government came calling and demanded the user data of journalists on Instagram, for instance, we have protections. That's not the situation we face with the Chinese Communist Party. There is no free expression. We're talking about a foreign adversary here owning this company, and they could spin it out tomorrow, and U.S. TikTok would be exactly what it is today, but they're refusing to do that. And I think that should raise some skepticism. I also think we should have a healthy skepticism every time our government says, well, because national security. We all should be questioning that. Like we all should say, where's the data, where's the evidence? And an interesting thing about this case that the Supreme Court, 3 of the justices were very fixated on, is that the government has sealed data that it says, sealed files about the national security implications, and the TikTok litigants did not get access to it.
Oh.
And I think that is a problem.